So on the front end, I'm going to just ask the team, could you guys read over the success criteria for what it means, just the big idea success criteria. I already put in the rubric your enduring understandings at the top. So these are the things that you hoped kids would come to on their own accord. So I put those in the top just to remind us, and they're there. And then down here, we typically would do a quick norm check, and I put some in here for right now. These are the norms, and so we would quickly talk about them. We're not going to do that now. But what we'll do is at the end of the meeting, you typically come back to it, and then we just kind of rate ourselves on the norms, and then that helps us to monitor the norms. So they're not just something that hang on a wall, okay? We'll go down right to the analysis piece, and we're going to look at your kids that were advanced first. So could you pull out some papers that represent your kids that might have scored advanced? I typically like the criteria to be plugged in before the meeting because it's just plugging in the rubric. And we head into step 2. Everyone show me step 2. And this step, we're really digging into the student work. And the question is why? Why are the kids able to do this successfully? What does it say about their thinking? What does it say about their knowledge of the concepts to be able to do all those things successfully? What's not okay at this point is to talk about what you taught them. Because there's other kids that you taught that didn't come to this quite so quickly. So there's some building blocks here, or there's some knowledge that they have that we want to pull out and understand because we want to replicate this. So what would be some things that you think, and you can think about this quickly on your own first or at your table, what are some things that you think that these kids can do in terms of the knowledge of the concepts and skills and in terms of them being able to express the knowledge and skills? What do you think are some things that they're able to do? They're able to do all these things. Why?
They have to have the content knowledge of what a complex institution is and examples of them.
Okay, so they have to have the content knowledge. What else? They have to be able to find examples of it.
Understand the prompt to take a position.
What else?
They understood what a counterclaim meant.
So the concept of a counterclaim. Okay.
They had to know that their evidence supported their position.
So they had to make
The
a
content
connection
knowledge
between
supported,
evidence, connection between. Anything else that these kids that you notice, look at their work. What are some examples of the way that they did this that might help us to teach the other kids? Are there any ways that they laid out their position? And you can just jot those down and I'll put those right in the notes.
They need to be good writers because you could do all of this. I might have kids that could do this orally, but I mean, they have to be good writers because how do you get your point across without being able to string together a sentence or a paragraph?
Right.
And I don't know how to.
No, I like that. So what were some of the moves that they made as writers to be able to do that? Is there some ways that they started sentences?
They started with their counterclaim.
So how did they do
Almost
that?
all of them.
Although they're using that specific.
Okay, anything else?
Their reasons are grouped together. And the evaluation is just before that or after.
I think the more that we dig into what they're doing specifically, that'll help us to help the other kids. So let's go into the evidence, and that brings us to the evidence. So we've been talking about the visible learning research and the things that get the highest effect, and we're really talking about kids' efficacy. And what the research says is they have to have good models. That's the #1 source of efficacy. They have to have mastery moments, so they have to experience success, and they also have to have models, good models of what mastery is. So the question would be, how would we get good models into their hands?
You have to write them.
So you could write,
Or have old student examples.
you could write models together.
Yeah, I've been collecting them from this year for next
Yeah.
semester, next year.
Yeah, so collecting them, other ways to get models in their hands or to see models.
Well, you can partner them up and they can create on their own with guidelines.
That's what I did with the peer editing process, that once they would meet with their peer, editors, is to then collectively talk through as a group, okay, what were some of the good examples you saw? And then pull out one or two in the class, and then, display that up on the big screen, and then have people say, okay, now if we just go with this as, the exemplary model, what would be some evidence to add to this that would work, and kind of build an original one right there in the class.
So what you're really doing is you're really guiding them through peer assessment. You're not just setting them off and say peer assess. It's highly structured and you're guiding them through it. So let's just put that up, guided peer assessment. Cool. So these are all, when we look at all of these ideas, are all about getting models in their hand, looking for the criteria in the models and guiding them through it, and then the feedback. So what are we going to push these kids higher to do since they're already advanced? What would be the next step for them?
Help other kids.
So they can teach others, right?
Some of this, the benefit of the whole rubric, the whole BEAST rubric, is that the big idea, evidence, and analysis are somewhat intertwined or dependent on each other. And so there's an opportunity then for them to work on that.
Right.
To develop their
Yeah,
evidence
'cause
for
we had
their
kids that-
counterclaim.
We got the, top marks on the big idea, but then fell apart on the evidence or the analysis, and that would be the part in terms of, okay, you had a good start here, now it's time to focus on stage 2, stage 3, the evidence.
And so are these different stages, is that how you have that laid out? So then they'd be working on more of the rubric. And so you'd want them to move to evidence?
Yeah.
Or we could possibly differentiate the questions. And for example, this last one, the prompt was, how do complex institutions positively or negatively influence civilization? So we're forcing them into a position, like we're telling them, positive or negative. So if we get rid of those words or other words, then they might have to really make their position themselves instead of giving them, two different avenues kind of spelled out nice and easy for them.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, it's a good idea. We've talked about that a little bit in terms of if you give them a question or just a statement,
Yeah.
an explained statement, what do they do with that?
So we have to just come to some agreements with what minimal requirements we're all going to try. So we have teaching others and moving to the evidence section. Do we want as a group, if we have advanced learners, to try this question idea? And if we do, what do I write? And we don't have to, because you have two pretty good ideas, so you could have an optional one. I think what we want to lay out in the impact team world is that you're coming to some agreements together that you're all going to do, but you always can do other things on top of that. And so you don't have to sit and all agree on everything, but you have teaching others, moving to the evidence part of the rubric, that's good. Do you want to also do the question, or do you want that to be optional? What do you guys think?
The question being rewording it and making it more
Of a prompt as
complicated,
opposed to-
more open-ended type
Right.
instead of, okay.
I think if you look at, especially students on standardized testing, not that that's driving it at all, but it is not in question form, it is more statement prompt form. So I think it is important that they then can do that step of recognizing that they're going to have to evaluate, even if it's not explicitly stated.
Yeah, what do you think? I mean, it was your idea. Do you think that's a good, or do you have a different idea?
3 of my 5 world history classes are supported with English and reading. And so a lot of them are just, struggling, I think with Brian's students as well, just writing like
Right.
sentences that are coherent and make sense.
Sure.
So with that group of students, I have done way less of, talking about counterclaim and even looking at the advanced, because I'm trying to get them to proficient.
And we're going to talk about them in a minute
Yeah,
specifically.
no, but so I would have less kids that I think I was differentiating the question for, but it's not a bad idea by any means.
Okay, so let's all try this, by the next time. So we have the teaching each other, moving to the evidence, and then trying to make it more open-ended or a statement in terms, I think that makes sense. We could try it. We'll give it a try and see how.
No, we've talked about it. I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
And it gives us the freedom to try some of that we've been talking about, whether or not we should do it and see how it works.
Perfect. So now we're going to move to the proficient kids.